Hello all, welcome to your schemes. I am Ilakya. I hope you are all doing well. Today we are going to see top 20 large cap funds to invest this year. Large cap mutual funds are those that invest at least 80% of corpus in top 100 companies by market capitalization. Why to invest in large cap funds? Firstly, the large cap funds gives very good returns. The important point is that large cap funds delivers good returns even when the market is not doing good. This fund is the safest option among other equity funds. It gives you stable returns and has high liquidity. These funds offers more returns when you invest for long term. This video is for information purpose only. Mutual funds are subject to market risk. The return shown in this list doesn't guarantee future returns. Please consult your financial advisor before investing. First, we have ICICI Prudential Bharat 22 Funds of Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 46.4%. The expense ratio of this fund is 0.08%, which is very low. Minimum SIP investment amount under this scheme is Rs 1000. Next we have Nippon India Large Cap Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 30.18%. Expense ratio is 0.87%. If you want to invest in this fund, the minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 1000. Let's move on to Quant Focused Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 27.94% with an expense ratio of 0.76%. Minimum SIP investment amount under this scheme is Rs 1000. Next we have HDFC Top 100 Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 26.5%. Expense ratio is pretty high, which is 1.11%. Minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 100. Next we have SBI Blue Chip. This gave a 3-year return of 22.63%. Expense ratio is 0.87%. Minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 500. Next move on to Mahindra Manulife Large Cap Fund. This gave a return of 22.22% in 3 years. Expense ratio is 0.73%. Minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 500. Next on the list is Tata Large Cap Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 22.06% with an expense ratio which is pretty high, 1.22%. Minimum SIP investment amount under this scheme is Rs 150. Next we have Aditya Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 21.67% with an expense ratio of 1.01%. Minimum SIP investment amount under this scheme is Rs 500. Let's move on to Mirae Asset Equity Allocator Funds of Fund. The 3-year return of this fund is 21.34% with a very low expense ratio of 0.03%. Minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 1000. Next we have Edelweiss Large Cap Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 21.12%. Expense ratio of this fund is 0.82%. Minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 100. Next on the list is Sundaram Large Cap Fund. The 3-year return of this fund is 20.63% with an expense ratio of 0.62%. Minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 100. Next we have Kotak Blue Chip Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 20.47% with an expense ratio of 0.58%. And the minimum investment amount SIP investment is Rs 100. Let's move on to Baroda BNB Paribas Large Cap Fund. The 3-year return of this fund is 20.3% with an expense ratio of 0.94%. Minimum SIP investment amount under this scheme is Rs 500. Let's move on to Invesco India Large Cap Fund. The 3-year return of this fund is 19.83%. Expense ratio 0.80%. Minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 100. Moving forward, we have Canara Robeco Blue Chip Equity Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 19.68% with an expense ratio of 0.44%, which is low, and minimum SIP investment amount is Rs 1000. Mirae Asset Large Cap Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 19.2% with an expense ratio of 0.54%. Minimum SIP investment amount is rupees 1000. Let's move on to JM Large Cap Fund. This gave a 3-year return of 18.58%. Expense ratio is pretty high, which is 1.74%. Minimum SIP amount under this scheme is rupees 1000. Next we have ICICI Prudential Blue Chip Fund. This gave a pretty good return of 24.01% in 3 years. Expense ratio 1.01%. Minimum SIP investment amount is rupees 100. Lastly, we have IDBI India Top 100 Equity Fund, which gave a 3-year return of 23.3%, expense ratio 1.25%, and minimum SIP investment amount under the scheme is rupees 500. If you are looking for good returns, stable returns with low to moderate risk, you can go for large cap fund. Some of these funds from the list, we see that it has lowest expense ratios, which is another plus point. If you feel this video was informative, then please hit the like button and share it with your friends. For more similar content, please subscribe to Your Schemes. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.